one of the things that is very clear in season 30 of Major League Soccer is how serious of a business this is. As much as it's a game, as much as we appreciate being able to be a part of it, but at the end of the day, it's about people. And you and I have talked a lot about this, whether it be Pro Rel and USL and the American Enterprise or the U.S. men's national team. And even here, when really, really good people have to find a difficult moment where they have to transition. And, I sent Peter Vermes a note, and it's a quote that I say often. And sometimes if I'm not in the right space, I'll butcher it. But this one I have clarity on. And I just simply sent him a note saying not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. And it's just remarkable that Peter quietly was the fourth longest tenured club manager in the world.
Yeah.
In the world. And in 2009, we were on iPhone 3 when he took over SKC. Yep. And now we're pushing 2009. And now Diego Simeone now is the fourth longest tenured manager in global football. And it wasn't surprising, the news, considering just the low ebb that Sporting Kansas City had been in the last couple of years. It just seemed like they just didn't hit on the right things at the right time in terms of players. And obviously Peter has been someone who has had the ability to do the shopping, do the cooking, and decide the menu in terms of his role as general manager and sporting director and head coach and all the different titles he's had over time. So I'm curious, as someone who actually knows this organization, knows this man very well, your thoughts on Peter Vermes and really the end of an era in Major League Soccer, as he's certainly one of the all-time best to ever do it in our league.
I think the end of this era in Sporting Kansas City history, as far as we all know it, is a time for all of us to reflect. Full stop, period. Because Peter is a manager, is a player, is a figurehead, is a leader, is an intellect, and a student of this game that has inspired so many of us. Just to be honest with you, for me, a player who played for him, I grew immensely in the 2015 season where I was on the team. But Peter is also the type of person that will just tell you straight up how it is, and he doesn't sugarcoat things. He was very upfront with me in the sense that they were looking to try to draft me right out of college, and it didn't end up working out. So when they had the opportunity to bring me into the organization,
they waited
4 or 5 seasons later?
They had to come get you. They had to trade up to get you, Shedeur Sanders. You better go get my boy. You weren't going to be sticking around waiting for Peter to. Back in them days, they didn't have a high draft pick because they were really good teams. So you weren't going to be lasting too long on anyone's draft board.
They actually did, though. Here's the interesting thing. So I went number 9 overall to Chicago. And
top 10.
They had the 10th, and they had the 10th pick that year. And CJ Sapong went to Sporting Kansas City number 10. So it worked out exactly how it was supposed to work out.
That's how it went down.
Because Sporting Kansas City was a perfect place for CJ to start, fortify, and jet fuel skyrocket his career. And Sporting Kansas City was a perfect place for me to play after I had a bit of experience underneath my belt. So it all works out exactly how it's supposed to work out. But when you talk about Peter Vermes, to play for him, at least in the times that I played for him, you had to be mentally tough. You had to be a team player. You had to be a student of the game. You had to push yourself beyond what you felt was your potential. But then when you did so, you felt very, very good, and you were rewarded because you knew that if you could succeed under Peter, you could succeed anywhere in the league.
Yep.
And
that's right.
Listening to Morning Footy this week, it was excellent how Nate Bukaty and Tony Miola, the homies, broke it down, because there are very few people in this ecosystem that can speak on what it means what the end of this era means other than those two. There are a few others, but those two can speak on it extremely well. Nate Bukaty being the play-by-play broadcaster for Sporting for years on end before the Apple deal, and Tony Meola became a legend in sport in Kansas City as far as his club days are concerned, right?
Yep.
They talked about how many things Peter has done to push the game forward beyond his managerial seat on the touchline. And I just have to give a huge shout out to Peter because, I think when we talk about where we want the game to continue to grow to, where we want it to grow to, whether it's the MLS or the U.S. men's national team,
Mm-hmm.
we have to continue to try our best to adopt certain growth mindsets that Peter has led us to understand you have to have in order to do anything at an extremely high level.
I have always been appreciative of Peter on three different fronts. First, when I was an up and coming coach and under the wing, deep down in the tree of under Siggy Schmidt, Peter was someone that would show love and respect because he knew you were in the game and you were living that life. And, he was New Jersey tough and honest, and he is, I should say, as a manager and someone who represented the U.S. at the highest level. But I know personally when I was starting to transition as an executive, he was very supportive along with Greg Berhalter and a couple other folks in terms of Bob Bradley, like really looking at my work and my deliverables and fine tuning them. He was always there, a text, a call away. And this game, Jalil, is so interesting because, Peter has receipts in this game, and we're not going to go through all the accolades. He is a Hall of Famer as well. But, he was a Metro star, not even, we're talking about an organization technically that doesn't exist. And he was traded to the Rapids for the new interim coach for Sporting Kansas City, Kerry Zavanian. That is the wild, wild way that this
Wow.
game is connected and
Yep.
how much we are very much 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon when it comes to this stuff. So we wish Peter well. This is a guy, married his high school sweetheart and a Rutgers guy and made it to a World Cup in the old school Adidas kits way back in the way in 1990, and 4 major trophies and so many accolades and much respect to him. And now that really helps to turn the page. And this organization that you know very well, we talked about your experience there. Where do they go from here? What is next for Sporting Kansas City? They are one of those teams that quietly, when they are better and when they're good, the league is very good as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The last thing that I'll say before I get to your question, just on Peter
Please.
himself, I spoke to him this week, and one thing that I've always admired about him and our relationship is that no matter where I've been in my career and what phase I'm in,
Mm-hmm.
Peter will always tap in, and we always tap in
Yeah.
with each other.
Yeah.
And so for people like that, it helps me to understand no matter how busy I am, it's very important to make sure that you still stay connected with people,
That's right.
right?
That's
You
right.
still stay connected with people. The moment I announced my retirement, I swear to you, Peter hit me within a half an hour.
Mm, mm,
And,
mm.
so for me, it was a foregone conclusion that, okay, as soon as I saw the news, I was gonna hit Peter. I wasn't gonna shy away from the moment or
Right.
anything like that.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, one thing that people need to always understand about Peter, as wild and as tense as he always looked on the sideline from the outside looking in, he was a man of conduct. He was a man of making
Proper
sure that you
football
do
man.
things the right way
That's right.
and to conduct yourself in a way that commands respect. And
That's right.
that is what I have always
Yes.
resonated with when it comes to Peter, because that's how I was raised.
He was very proud of his Hungarian roots and his family, and he always wanted to do right by his parents. And that's something that I know both you and I really resonates with both of us on that.
Facts. So, as far as where does Sporting Kansas City go from here, that's the $1 million question, or multi-million-dollar question for them, quite literally and figuratively. But I like the fact that Kerry Savagnin, who's also a former Tar Heel, by the way, shout out Kerry, is is
Fair.
is in the managerial seat because he's been in the club for so long. He
Hmm.
understands what the ethos of the community, the market, the style of play that resonates with the fans. Someone that has been in an organization for that long as the number 2,
Hmm.
they deserve a crack at it.
That's
And
true.
so we will see where things go under Carey. We'll analyze how it all works, but I hope Sporting Kansas City is able to turn things around, because I completely agree with you that when Sporting Kansas City is firing on all cylinders, it's typically synonymous with the league growing and ascending. So we'll see. I don't want to speak too prematurely on what is next for Sporting, because that's for them to figure out, and I want to give
Hmm.
them the respect to do it on their own terms.
Well, you always are quick to make fun of the number of spins I have around the sun and the grays in the beard. But for me, my MLS, if you will, is when Chicago, Kansas City, and Dallas were good. And I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that era when those clubs are good, holding down that sort of part of the country. And then Columbus sort of bled in. You have Cincinnati. Ideally, in my world, sort of Wakanda light, you know, uh, everyone is good, obviously, but I think you need to have that spine and have these anchor organizations and teams with stars and so
Yep.
many great players, so many great players. And the one thing I'll say on SKC, when I think about pros who've played in this league, a lot of them have come out of Kansas City under Peter Vermes. You and I were talking about Graham Zusi. We talked about Beasler. You were there. We talked about Ike Opara, Kerry Zavanian. Chris Klein did some time there. Like, Chris Hinder. Like,
Roger,
come on.
Josh
Like,
Wolf,
go for
Chance
it.
Myers, Seth
Mhm,
Sinovic,
mhm.
Benny Philhaber,
Yep,
Tim Melia,
yep.
Jimmy Conrad. Come on, man. You want me to
Yeah.
keep you want me to keep going? Jake
Well,
Peterson. When you played for
I
Peter, you had
that
to be a
that
top
that's just
pro,
what
and
it
how you
is.
conducted yourself. That was the Dom Dwyer. That's just what it was. So
Mhm.
standards were undeniably, I don't even want to say risen. They were ratcheted up to an extremely high level, all the way from the stadium build, the locker room. Yo, no. The locker room, the
Yep,
film room, all this stuff was like next
yep,
level. No one was doing these types of things. And now you have training facilities and stadiums that mirror what Kansas
yep.
City did in
Correct.
2011.
Yep. But I spent a lot of time there on site visits there with the national team. Jurgen loved playing there, and the Cauldron and all the supporters groups always brought it. And we had a couple of great results there. And you're right, they were the first ones kind of incorporated that whole vibe, if you will, in terms of the stadium vibe, the stadium club, the proximity to the players. All that stuff was really really cool.